Hey guys, we are live. Sorry about the long wait there. Just had to make sure we get this shared to a few groups. So, for the next few podcasts, we are just going to be streaming on YouTube. What we're trying to do is trying to get more viewers on the YouTube page. You know, the Facebook podcasts are getting about 3,000 viewers, which is great, and I appreciate you guys' help. So what we're going to do is we're going to try to stay on YouTube for a while just to get more people going to YouTube. Plus, you guys, if you guys have YouTube Premium, you can, drop out the window and you can listen to it without having to actually watch the video and see my ugly face. So head on over to YouTube. Obviously, if you're seeing this, it's coming from YouTube. If you guys would subscribe and hit the notification bells, I'm going to try to do at least one podcast a week. And if you guys haven't seen any of our podcasts yet, most of them are about veterans doing amazing things. We have authors of books. We've had Navy SEALs. We've had all kinds of amazing people on the podcast telling their story, talking about their struggles, but also their amazing accomplishments. Today I have on Alexs Thompson. He was in the Navy from 96 to 2000. He's the author of the book I'll Go. He's got a website scrolling at the bottom there called thisherolife.com. It's a story about his life before, during, and after the military and living over in the Middle East. So I'm excited to talk to him. Today we are brought to you by TCal Knives. If you go to TCal Knives on Facebook, Instagram, and then their website as well, they have some amazing knives. I have one of them. I'm actually about to order two more for a raffle we're going to be having here soon. Tim is a Marine Corps veteran. He makes some amazing knives. I beat the crap out of this knife that he sent to me, and it's got no issues. I absolutely love this thing. When you go to order a knife from him in the checkout, if you type in the promo code Warrior, not only will you get 10% off, but Tim will donate that 10% to Warrior's Next Adventure. So not only do you get an awesome knife, but you also get to help out a nonprofit. So I'm going to bring Alex on here, and we will let him tell his story. So hold on one second. Hey, Alex, how you doing?
Hey, what's going on, Nick? How are you?
Good, man. We've been talking for a few weeks. Sorry I had to reschedule on you last week. We had a veteran who he needed a ramp put in his house so he could get his wife in and out of the house because she had a stroke, and we had to build this ramp, and we weren't done yet. So I'm sorry to reschedule. I really appreciate you.
Yeah, I mean, that's important stuff, man. We got to take care of each other, and you can always do a podcast, but when people are in need, you got to be there for them.
Exactly. And he's a Navy vet too, so you can
There you go. Yeah.
So how you doing, man?
Yeah, doing great. It's the weather's been great. I'm in Kansas City, so it's been great the past couple of weeks. Yeah, so yeah, things are good here.
I thought you lived in Chicago for some reason.
Yeah, I went to school in Chicago. I lived there for a long time. It was sort of like my second home for a long time. But yeah, I've been in Kansas City since 2015.
Oh, okay. You got a Chicago phone number. That's probably why.
Oh, yeah. That's it. Old school phone number.
So how did you hear about Warrior's Next Adventure? I don't remember if I asked you. You saw one of the podcasts, right?
Yeah, I saw one of the podcasts, and then I just started like reading about your story and about the work that you do, and I was like, I need to reach out to this guy. And I was like in the Uber, like on my way out, and I just just sent a quick note. I was like, hey man, this is who I am, this is what I'm about. I'm passionate about helping veterans. And then we talked that night for like 2 hours, right?
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah. It was cool. And, like I always tell you, most people who I end up having on the podcast, I share my story with them so they understand where I'm coming from. So I don't have to share it on the podcast.
Yeah.
Because everybody's heard my stories a million times. And, I want this to be about you and your book and, how you choose to help veterans and how you choose to, express yourself and share your stories.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's just really I was really affected by your story. And one of the things that I talk about is, it's one thing for you to tell your story or for me to tell my story, but the real magic here, right? The real power is when someone who doesn't have the words, right, or doesn't have the experiences to say, this is how I'm struggling, this is what's going on in my life. And if in some small way I'm able to help that, then that's what's important to me. And one of the reasons I wrote my book, I think like anybody who writes a book, the primary reason is because it's cathartic, right? It like helps you process what's happened in your life. You get to put it into words, and then some of us were like, well, I guess maybe someone else will want to read this, So that's one part of it. But the other part of it for me is, I just, I have obviously we all have lots of friends who were in combat, and
Yeah.
you just see people struggling through various parts of life, and I just have this burning passion to be able to be there and to help in some way, and hopefully my story does that. I've been really fortunate to get feedback from people who say that it does help them. It helps them think about their own experiences in a way that they haven't before.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's important to me.
Well, especially when you have somebody you can share your story with someone who's not going to judge you, and that
Right.
it seems like we both have the same mindset on veterans opening up and being vulnerable to each other.
Right.
I was having a conversation with the guy, Greg. He's a chief here in Minnesota at the Guard, and he actually helped me build Joe's ramp. But we also took him up to go see the Wolves on Friday. He loved it. It was great.
Yeah.
I got attacked by my guy.
Oh shit.
I sat down. He's the wolf that I rescued. So me and him we wrestle a lot. But I sat down, and he like lunged on me and damn near jumped on me. This thing, dude, when he stands up, he's like 6 feet tall. He's not
That's
super
crazy.
big. Yeah, he's
Yeah.
ridiculous. He's not super big, but he's just really long and lanky. But he's got these long, just goofy ass claws. He's
Yeah.
just a dope. But
That's awesome,
scratched the shit
man.
out of me.
Fucking
But I was talking.
wolf
I was
rescue.
talking. Yeah, dude, it's so fun. If you ever get a chance to come to Minnesota, please, I will take you up to go see the Wolves.
Yeah, I told you my dad's up there, so I get up there, man.
Let me know, man.
I will.
Then next time you come up here, dude, we'll make a special date for you. Pretty soon we got to stop bringing people up because the females start to go in heat, and when it gets cold, the females are bitches, and they get super aggressive. So we can't really go in their cages anymore just because it's too risky. And Timber actually was. I was in the cage with them, and Greg. We had a couple vets cancel on us, so I let Greg take his son and his daughter with.
Oh yeah.
So it was a great experience for them. But they were coming inside Timber's cage, and luckily I had my arms around him because he started growling and his hair stood up on his back. I'm like, yeah, why don't you guys go back outside?
Come back another time. How about that?
So we might have one more visit this year, and then we'll start up again in the spring.
Yeah, I don't know that I'll be traveling this year anyway. So
yeah. Well, I was talking to Greg, and oh man, I forgot where I was going with this. I had a reason for it.
I forget.
Anyway, so we're just gonna move on. Pretend we just didn't have that thought. So anyway,
sounds good.
Tell me about your book and why you chose to write it, what it's about, and how we can find it.
Yeah. So the book is called. Actually, let me get a copy here. Hold it up.
If I order one from you, can you sign it and send it to me?
Heck yeah. Heck
Awesome.
yeah, man.
Are you doing all your own shipping?
Most everyone's getting it on Amazon. So, but yeah, I have copies here. People sometimes will ship them to me so I can sign them, or I'll just sign them. And yeah, so there's all sorts of ways. So, yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, the book is called Algo: War, Religion, Coming Home, Cairo to Kansas City. So, it's kind of a long title, but I wrote the book because I did a lot of cool shit in my life. I wanted to write about it.
Yeah, we've chatted about it, man. I'm excited.
Yeah,
for other people.
I mean, I've just been really fortunate to have done a lot of really cool stuff, and so the book, you can get it on Amazon. You can type in my name, Alexs Thompson, spelled weird. It's right there on the bottom. Type it in, and you go to Algo, and you'll find it. The opening of the book is sort of like kick you in the nuts, get shot at in Kandahar in Afghanistan. One of the bad days in my life. And then it just starts working through my life. I had a really bad childhood. I was really abusive. And the reason I sort of started the book off that way is because I wanted to show a story of triumph. I wanted to be able to write sort of like a combat memoir that's about triumph. And I've had a lot of bad things happen to me, but I chose to transform them into the life that I wanted. When I was a kid, people said, you're never going to go anywhere. You're never going to do anything. You're never going to live up to your potential. Stupid shit. Like, I got in trouble when I had good grades. You know what I mean? Like, just stupid shit. Like, doesn't make any sense.
I was
right?
lucky to get a D.
And my parents, I grew up with my mom and a very abusive stepdad who I think was just trying to kick the shit out of me because he was angry and an addict and whatever, right?
We had a very similar childhood from
It's
or
and
from our story.
Yeah, and that's a big part of it. It's like so many people have similar stories. Whether it's how we grew up or our experiences in combat. And like I said, I wanted to do two things. One was to write a combat memoir that doesn't fantasize or fetishize war, right? There, like I said,
Yeah.
there's shooting and explosions and all that kind of stuff, but I didn't want to just show I was never, but there's all the badass Navy SEALs, Green Beret, like I knocked down the door, and there's all those books, and there's I read them and I like them,
Yeah.
but I wanted to fit in like in a different way. Like I got my PhD in early Islamic history. Like
Oh wow.
I memorized the Quran. I lived with fundamentalist Muslims in places like Yemen and Syria and Jordan and Egypt, right? I really embedded in this fundamentalist Muslim community across
Yeah.
the Middle East. I really tried to learn from them. And so the book, it's not just about combat, it's also about the mind and thoughts of fundamentalist Muslims. So I talk about the Quran, I talk about religious law, I talk about why people think the way that they do when it comes to this sort of war on terror. And then I talk through that, like I said. So, and then by the end of the book, I worked with General Petraeus, I worked with General McChrystal. And so if you think about this kid who's being abused, in my head, I imagined a life that I wanted to live. And then
Hmm.
I did the hard work. It's like, people helped me for sure along the way, but I put in the
Yeah.
hard work over decades to become that person that I knew I could be. And that's, to me, that's really what the book is about. I want it to be an inspiration to people who have a dream that no one else believes they can accomplish.
Yeah, and it happens all too often too, which is fucked up. But
Yeah.
people talking about it and sharing their experiences is what's going to help those kids actually like find their inner hero.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. I mean, and that's the whole, this whole project. I mean, the book is called I'll Go, but my project is called This Hero Life. And what I really try to talk about is like everyday hero and each of us finding the hero inside of ourselves. And I was talking to one of my friends the other day, and I said, if being an NFL player or an NBA star is what motivates you in life and you have the skill and drive to accomplish that, then go do it.
Hmm.
But if your passion, the hero inside of you is to be a librarian, right, or to get a PhD in early Islamic history, or
Yeah.
to be, the neighbor who shovels everybody's driveway and is there for people in the neighborhood, right? Whatever it is, like identify that hero inside of you and move towards that thing. Don't let someone else or society or some group or your parents identify who it is that you are and then push you to accomplish that. Because like I said, I think, we have that ability to become the hero that exists within this.
Yeah, absolutely, man. So, what made you go down that path of getting your PhD in
Yeah.
Muslim religion? Like that's
It
crazy.
is pretty crazy.
How did you
So,
come around that?
yeah, so, the short story is that I was in the Navy for 4 years. I
Hmm.
enlisted as a machinist mate.
Okay.
I did my 4 years and sort of, yeah, I was young. I was like, fuck it, I don't know what else I'm going to do. So I got out of the Navy in 2000. Then
Hmm.
9/11 happened. And I was like, well, shit, now what? I was like, do I go back into the military and try to serve in that way? But I was so, I think like a lot of people, so fundamentally shaken by 9/11 and confused. I was like, wait, the Middle East? What's the Middle East? Who's that? Like, where does he live? Is that a person or is it a place or what is it?
Yeah.
And so I was so stunned by that I was like, I have to figure this out. And it's a reflection of like me being just a passionate person because 9/11 happened. The very next day I was walking around with an Arabic language book and I was like, I'm committing my entire life to the Middle East, to solving this problem. Like whoever did this, I need to understand them. And I think a lot of people, understandably, there was anger there, but for me, it was really about confusion. and
Mm.
that pushed me to want to understand it. So the
I
next
think a
day,
lot of us were confused, but it just got masked in anger too, you know?
and I really, I mean, I was obsessed. So 9/11 happened. I started grad school at the University of Chicago the next fall. By 2003, I was in Egypt
Oh,
studying.
yeah.
Yeah. And I was in the Middle East until 2014, off and on. Spent, I don't know that there was an entire year that I was in the US from 2003 to 2014, just back and
Wow.
forth. Yeah. And so in that first period, I was in graduate school at the University of Chicago. And I would just take off, man. Like in the middle of the semester, well, we have quarters at the University of Chicago, but in the middle of the quarter, I took off, I hopped on an airplane, I went to Egypt, and I studied with fundamentalist Muslims, people who do not like non-Muslims, people who think that it's okay to kill people who don't believe. I mean, they weren't radicalized. They weren't the kind of people who were doing the killing, obviously, because I wouldn't
Yeah.
still be here.
Yeah.
But they would have been the people who would have said, "Yeah, I understand beheadings. I understand suicide bombing." Right? And
So
I
they
lived.
sat with you and they taught you firsthand?
And at first, I think they thought I was going to convert because the place where I was all European and American converts to Islam. Right?
Okay.
They were all folks who had not either. They weren't Muslim. They became Muslim, and they joined the sort of fundamentalist type. And I think for the first month, they just assumed that I was going to convert, and they were just really opening and welcome and told me everything. Right?
Yeah.
Like little stuff that I don't think a lot of people pick up on, but like there's a strand of Islam, like little things, like I said, where it's like if you drink water, you're
Mhm.
supposed to get down on one knee to drink the water, because there's hadith or this story about the prophet that every time he drank water he got down on one knee, right?
Oh,
Just
really?
like little stuff like that. I learned, like, got really into the not just the reading but the living of the life, going to the mosque and praying. And I never lied, right? I never said that I was going to convert. I always
Yeah.
told them that I was Catholic and I wanted to stay Catholic, but I just think they didn't believe me. That changed very quickly once they realized that I wasn't going to convert, and then it got pretty hostile.
Yeah.
So that was in Egypt. While I was
They
there.
actually started to become hostile towards you because they found out you
Yeah,
weren't gonna convert?
yeah, it finally sunk in that I wasn't going to convert.
And
Um,
how long did this take before they started to realize it?
it was like 6 months or so, because
Oh.
like I said, I've always been very clear about who I am and about my religion, but
Mhm.
because I was so intensely curious about their religion, like I said, if they were like, "Hey, do you want to go pray with us? Hey, do you want to go listen to this guy recite the Quran for the next 3 hours?" I'd be like, "Yeah, I'll do that." Like I had classes for just a few hours a day, but I would go home and I would study all day and all night. Like I looked like um, a devout Muslim in a lot of ways. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? I was still, in Egypt has a Coptic community, which is sort of like an indigenous Christian community, sort of pre-Catholic Church, even like really old Christian community. So I was still going to mass. You know what I mean? I was still going to the Catholic Church or the Coptic Church if I couldn't find one. Um, but I looked like a fundamentalist Muslim. Like I could hang with them reciting, hadith and the rules of religion and the Quran, et cetera, et cetera. I could hang with them. And I was learning Arabic. So I think it took a while for them to realize, yeah, this guy's not going to convert. And that created a conflict with them. They're like, oh shit, we've shared all of this with him.
Mhm.
And then I think they were concerned that I was going to try to use it against them, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, yeah. I
But
could see why they would think that.
yeah, and the reason, and so I did that, right? I mean, I was stupid. I don't write about this in the book, but I was when I was in Egypt that first time. This is 2003. I was trying to figure out how I could sneak my way into Iraq so I could spend time, in like Najaf, where the Shiites have a center of learning. Just like really
Yeah.
stupid stuff like that, because I was so obsessed with fixing the world, right? Like fixing U.S. Middle East relations, which is this
Mhm.
naive idea, but I was just obsessed with it. And I lived in Oman, which is in the Persian Gulf, and then I
Yeah.
backpacked through Yemen, right?
What?
I hopped on a bus
Oh my God.
in
So
2006.
tell us about that, man.
Oh man, it is the craziest thing I've ever done in my life for sure, because I put my life in
How
danger.
did people treat you?
So at that point, so this would be 2006. I've studied Arabic for a few years, so I wouldn't say I was fluent, but I would say that in the first 15 minutes to a half hour, no one's gonna know that I'm American. They'll know that I'm not Yemeni because like I can speak Arabic, but I'm not speaking with that like Yemeni accent.
Mm-hmm.
And so I have some leeway there. But I'll give you an example. Um, so yeah, I hop on this bus, and I'm on this bus for like 2 days, right?
Yeah.
Just riding through the desert. And on the second leg of my journey, I had made friends with a police officer who helped me get on a second bus that Americans are not allowed on. I was going through the northern part of Yemen, through terrorist central, essentially, a place called Ma'rib, right?
Mm.
Totally ungoverned. And so we get to the first checkpoint on this bus, and this, police officer hops on, and he's like, "Hey, where's the American?" And I'm mortified,
Oh
right? It's a
no.
bus full of Yemenis, right? It's the middle of the night. I have I'm nowhere in the desert, right? There's nothing
Yeah.
around me. And so this guy's like, "Where's the American?" And I just sit there. I don't say anything.
I wouldn't either, man. I'd be shitting
I'm
my pants.
stunned. Yeah, because I feel like if I can, because I was going from the north of Yemen to the capital, to Sana'a, and I was like, if I can just sit on this bus and say hi, thank you, how are you? They'll think I'm from Kenya, or they'll think I'm from like southern Egypt. I have darker skin, but I speak Arabic, so they'll be like, oh,
Yeah.
whatever. It's like keep to myself and like no problem. So I sit there and I don't say anything. And he's a young police officer. It's like said, it's the middle of nowhere, and it's the middle of the night. He sort of like, it's like, what the hell's going on here? It's like hops off the bus, and then this bigger, you can tell he's like a more senior police officer hops on. He's like, "Where's the American at?" And I'm like, so I like hop up, and in between the one guy hopping off and the other guy hopping on, everybody on the bus is cracking up. They're like, "An American? Are you kidding me? Like, what the heck are you talking about, man? There's no Americans on this bus." Laughing. And the second police officer comes up and he's pissed, right? And I'm like, "Oh, fuck." So I like raise my hand and I start walking. You can just see like I'm in the back of the bus trying to like keep myself away from everybody, but you could just see people's heads turning, their eyes are dropping. They're like, "What?" So I walk up, I hand him my passport, and he just grabs it and hops off the bus. And now, I'm like,
Oh
what
shit.
I'm like, my life is over. Like, there's nothing for me now. So he's gone for a few minutes, and I'm just stood there at the front of the bus. I don't want to turn around. I don't want to get off the bus. I don't want to look at anybody.
Yeah.
And he comes back a few minutes later, hands me my passport, and the bus takes off. And I turn around, and it was fucking mayhem. Dude, these guys on that bus were not happy with me. It was
Man, they hate Americans that much, huh?
In that first probably 45 minutes, I thought I was going to die. Like, no shit. I don't know if you know about like traditional Yemeni culture. They carry that knife. It's called a khanjar. They wear the dishdasha or the thobe with a knife and the turban. And I was like, they're going to fucking kill me.
About to get fucking beheaded on this bus.
Yeah. I'm not like, oh, isn't this really funny? This is really interesting cultural experience. I get to, no, it was like, I'm scared for my fucking life right now. Like, shit's about to end, and it's going to end badly.
Oh my God.
They are like, what do you work for the CIA? Why are you here? Are you a spy? Like, and it starts off with like one person, just like any group like that. If you think of a group of teenagers, right? It's like
So
one person says,
on the bus, the people on the bus were turning around asking you questions?
The people on the bus, man.
Oh my God,
it was
dude.
so bad. Right? So like here's a question, there's a question, and I'm speaking in Arabic. Like I can, like if I'm one-on-one with someone at this point, like I can make a joke, right? It's like, oh yeah, I'm an American, and then they'd be like, oh, you're not American, and I can make a joke about it, say this or that. It's like one person on this bus in Yemen say something, and another person, and I'm sort of like, oh no big deal. 3 people, 5 people.
Oh
People
no.
start standing up, sort of walking back. I mean, this goes on. I'm sweating bullets, man.
I bet, man.
Eventually, we stop and, we stop for a rest, right? Get back on the bus. I run in, I grab some food, and I like run back outside. I'm like, I need to get away from these people. But
Yeah.
it's not like I can hail a taxi or get an Uber or
Yeah. In the middle
another
of the
bus or
desert.
something. I'm in the middle of fucking nowhere.
Yeah.
So everybody piles back on the bus, and this guy sits down next to me. He's
Oh
wearing,
no.
the traditional garb. He's got his knife by his hand, and I'm like, well, this is it. And it's really interesting. I mean, I think lots of people have this experience, but when you have experiences when you genuinely, not like exaggerating, you're not being melodramatic, but you genuinely believe that your life is about to end, it changes, even if it doesn't, right? It
Yeah.
changes you, right? And so there was a moment where I was just like, yeah, I'm going to die. And I wasn't like freaking out. I wasn't crying. I was just like, I knew what I was getting myself into. I'm on a bus in
Yeah.
Yemen. So, it's like, but this guy, he turns to me and he says, hey, what's your name? And I'm like, Iskandar. In Arabic, I always said my name is Iskandar, Alexander. And he's like, oh, where are you from? Yeah, I live in Chicago. I'm a student. And he's like, yeah, I know that because everybody's asked you that about 10 times, but where in Chicago do you live? And he starts asking me like these really detailed questions. He's like, oh, yeah, that's where
Yeah.
the mob is. He's like, bang, bang, the mob is there. And what he's doing over the next 15 or 20 minutes is defusing the situation.
Mhm.
He humanizes me, right? And he's like making jokes and he's asking me about my parents and my family and about what I study and why I study it. And within an hour, I'm talking about Gulf politics with these people,
Oh wow.
right? They're all guys who work in like Abu Dhabi or Dubai
Mhm.
and travel once or twice a year from the Gulf back to Yemen to see their families. And they're talking about how difficult it is, how bad it is to find jobs in Yemen. Then we start talking about terrorism and terrorists. And they talk about how terrorists are hijacking their country and their rich history, et cetera, right? And so it turns into this really awesome cultural experience where I learned something about Yemen and Yemenis, which I never could have learned otherwise.
Mhm.
And it was exactly the reason that I went there. It is exactly the reason I took the risk that I did, is because it taught me something that I still think about today. And I write about that a lot, that experience in the book. And it was really powerful for me. So
Yeah.
Yemen was, like I said, there were probably 2 or 3 times when I thought I was going to lose my life, but it's such a beautiful country. It's an amazingly beautiful country. I wish more Americans could go and just hang out,
Yeah.
but I do not recommend it.
Yeah, I won't be going back to the Middle East anytime soon.
Yeah, I don't recommend that.
Maybe, I did I was stationed in Qatar. I don't call it a deployment. It's Qatar.
Yeah.
So we were in Asalea, not LUD. So everybody usually goes to LUD, the air base there, and
Yeah.
then
Yeah.
Asalea was a small base that SETCOM used to be stationed at.
Oh, yeah.
And so our job was, we were Air Force Security Forces, so our job was to secure the base. And we got to go downtown to Doha all the time. It's
Oh,
beautiful.
yeah.
It,
Yeah.
have you
Yeah.
ever been there?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Bro, do you ever go to the Bellagio?
I didn't go
The
to the
really,
Bellagio.
really beautiful mall. There, it's gorgeous. So for those of you guys who haven't been there, it's like, it looks like Venice. There's like a river that goes through the center of the mall. Like you can, what do they call the gondolas? Is that
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
boat?
Yep.
Yeah. And then I think that's the one. There's like a giant ice slide in the basement. Where you
Oh,
ride down on
nice.
a fucking tube, and you see all these guys in like turbans and shit riding down on an ice tube. It's hilarious.
Yeah. You see
Um,
stuff like that in Dubai too.
yeah, man, the food was good.
Yeah.
The gold souks, man, you can get
Oh,
gold for
yeah.
so cheap there.
Yep.
Um, I think I bought my first wife. I bought her one of her rings there, and
Oh,
then we ended up going to, those old like fishing, like Chinese fishing boats. We
yeah. Yep.
rented one of those, and we went out and actually went fishing on the
That's
Gulf and
awesome.
everything. It was gorgeous.
Yeah. I mean, that's one of the things I write about in the book is how, like I said, I spent most of a decade back and forth the Middle East, and not all of it was with the military. So it wasn't like I spent all that time on a military base sort of living with Americans. It was in Syria, hanging out with fundamentalists, right?
Yeah.
But the weird part about it is that it became a part of who I am, right? And so it's been 6 years since I've been in the Middle East, and that's very intentional, by the way. But I lived my life with the Quran playing over and over and over. When I saw things in everyday life, I saw them from the perspective of a fundamentalist Muslim. And I'm like, devout Catholic, and the type of fundamentalist Muslim that I studied was the kind that would justify or allow for radicalism. Like I said, I never studied with radicals. I never, there are some people who go with terrorist groups and understand them, and I never did that. But I studied with the theologians for them. You know what I mean?
Okay.
And so it was really weird for me to be like a patriot, right? To love my country, to be a Roman Catholic, but to see the world through a fundamentalist Muslim eyes. Yeah. And so I lived in the Middle East and fell in love with so many different places, and the fishing and living by the water and the culture. And so I had both of those in my head, and it was always, at first it was really uncomfortable.
Yeah.
I always just say, like, there's a fundamentalist Muslim living inside of me, but it really came to fruition. Like I said, it's like when 9/11 happened, I created a dream. I conceptualized my hero life. Like, I conceptualized what it meant for me to live the life that I believed I was born to live. Mm-hmm. And when I was standing in front of General Petraeus, as an example, and saying, okay, well, here's the verse from the Quran that really substantiates this, and here's some, religious law fiqh that really drives this way of thinking, and that's why we're seeing these events happen in the Gulf. As
hold on, take a step back. How the fuck did you get around the generals? Like, what happened there? When was this?
Yeah, so my first deployment was as a civilian. All of my work with, so like I said, I'm a Navy veteran, but all of my deployments with the military were as a civilian advisor. So my first deployment.
Did this happen while you were in the Middle East, or like, how did you get recruited for that?
I got recruited. I was back and forth to the Middle East, and I think I triggered something. Someone saw me on a something and said, "Holy shit, this guy's been all over," right? And so I got an email one day, and I write about it in the book, because I get an email that says, "Hey, we're looking for civilians who have PhDs in anthropology, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera." It just went on to basically describe me. Right, like understand the languages and the culture. And I'm calling my friends. I'm like, real fucking nice here. I get it. You're fucking punking me, right? But it turns out to be real. I went to work for one of these big companies called BAE. But the program was awesome, right? Like, so that was the first time I went to the Middle East with the military. It was in Iraq. I was in Fallujah, and our job was to build essentially the human terrain, to understand all of the human networks, and then help. I worked with the Marines. That was after the Army left and the Marines came in to Fallujah, to help them figure out who they could engage with to build stronger communities. So we did things like we did a poll in Fallujah for the elections. We helped them like, one of the things that the Marines did is they basically shut down Fallujah. They walled the city off, right? So we went out. I was there in 2008, 2009.
Okay, so it was after the whole 2000.
It was after 2004. Yeah. So we helped them redesign the way that the city was walled off to allow for farmers in the area to move back and forth through the city to sell their goods. We're like, okay, look, we're doing counterinsurgency, right? And you have all these farmers whose goods are rotting on their fields. Mm-hmm. That's not going to help people resist terrorists, right? That's not counterinsurgency. So we helped them. We just did a lot of really good work to help the Marines engage with local communities. After that, I went to work at CENTCOM in Tampa, and that's when Petraeus was there. Yeah, and so because of my Arabic, et cetera, I was on the Gulf desk, right? Yeah. Like, really focused on the Gulf.
I met Petraeus for a moment in Qatar in 2007. He actually, because like I said, we secured the CENTCOM headquarters, and I was working inside on the SCIF door. And I
Okay.
came walking in,
Yeah.
shit myself, and I saw who he actually was. I was like, oh fuck,
Yeah. Oh shit.
sir. Like,
Extra
do I
attention.
salute? I'm inside. Shit, like, what do I
Yep.
do?
Yeah,
So it
so I
was,
worked at Bahrain eventually, where I'm assuming that's where the headquarters went to, because CENTCOM
yeah.
had, yeah. So I worked with the Marines there. Okay, so
I think SECOM left Qatar in like 08 or something like that, maybe 09.
okay, yeah, I was in Bahrain, and so I got to work with Petraeus there, and that was really fucking awesome. Again, it was an opportunity for me to take all the stuff I had done, right? Like when 9/11 happened, I was like, I'm going to fix U.S. Middle East relations. Obviously, that's impossible, but that's what I said. Like that was my dream.
Oh, you
And
dream big,
when
man.
yeah, dream big, right? And then I got there, right? And then some years later, I got another really great opportunity based on the sacrifices that I made when I was in places like Yemen and Syria and Egypt, etc. I worked at, you know what the red team is? You know, it's basically red team, blue team type stuff. Red team is when you have a part of your staff, and a lot of times your military staff, who's supposed to think like the enemy. It's kind of like the devil's advocate, right?
Okay.
And so the S3 is going to come up with their operations plans, and the red team is going to say, no, that's not going to work because we're going to do this, and we think this way, and we want this, etc. So the Army, big Army, had a red team just outside DC.
Mm-hmm.
We worked, we worked with generals all over the world. It was fucking awesome. You know, we worked with Joint Staff in Afghanistan. We worked with people in Southcom all over. But one of the things we did was work with General McChrystal after his departure from the Army, let's just say. But that was another opportunity where we were working on a really hard problem for some generals in Afghanistan, and we were able to sit down and talk with him, and my ability to talk about what I had done and where I had been helped us sort of build rapport with him and get to the root of the problem. And, you know, like I always say, for General Petraeus and McChrystal, for their flaws, I have the utmost respect for them and what they did. You know, we all make mistakes. We're all human, you know, but I just have the utmost respect for them and what they've done and their command of the issues. You know, so like I said, I mean, I dreamed big, and I was really fortunate to get those dreams. But you know, in 2014, so this would be over a decade of me being obsessed, absolutely obsessed with the Middle East, months and months and months a year in the Middle East. I hit rock bottom. I was living in Bahrain, and it should have been the best time of my life. Like I'd done my shit tours. I'd been in Iraq, and not just Iraq. I was in Fallujah. I was in Afghanistan, not just Afghanistan. I was in Kandahar and in Helmand, blown up, shot at, like treated like shit. I was in Central and East Africa, dropped out of airplanes. I was working with the special forces there on some, you know, other missions. You know what I mean? And in 2014, I got this gig in Bahrain at CENTCOM, and you know, I was working for a civilian company. They had put me up in an apartment. I had a rooftop pool. I'm a big rugby player, you know what I mean? So there was a big rugby club. I was playing rugby, had all sorts of friends, and I was the most depressed I've ever been in my life.
Do you think it was because I have a theory, and I was reading the book Tribe. You ever read Tribe?
I haven't.
So there's a portion in the book where they're talking about war and why the fuck when we're overseas, we're fighting in Iraq and Afghanistan, we're fine. No big deal. You know, oh, just another day. I'm like, oh, those fuckers shot at us again. But then you get home and you hear a fucking car backfire and you lose your goddamn mind.
Yep.
It's because you're immersed in a safe environment. And when you're in a safe environment, it seems like the smallest things can cause anxiety. So whenever you're in an environment that's not full of danger or packed full of like new experiences, and you're just safe, the smallest things and all of the history and memories from your past start coming back to you, kicking your ass.
Yeah. I mean, the way I think about it is like, when I was in combat, I was in a compression suit. You know, it's like I had all this pressure on me, and it just kept everything tight. And as the pressure of combat released, like you said, all those things started to come to the surface. And I just remember there were weeks of time where thank God, I would go to work at least, but I would come home and like leave the lights off. I wouldn't eat, and I would just sit in my living room in the dark, you know, ignoring my friends' calls, not going to rugby practice, et cetera, and just darkness. Not like you've shared your story, and I think we all experienced that bottom differently. And for me, it was abject darkness, silence. Like there was no images, there were no memories, there was no thoughts, there was no sounds, smells. It was just emptiness. And for me, I think that's the worst torment. I have a PhD, so I study and I think about a lot of things. And if I can't process it, if I can't put it all into a way for me to understand it, then I get all fucked up, right? And I was just fucked up. And thankfully, in the midst of that, there was a voice, this really quiet voice. My internal voice is like, a drill instructor, right? Yeah. It's like, get your fucking shit together, get up. I row, I use the rowing machine a lot. I bike, I work out, you know what I mean? And it's always like, you can't, I was like, you go faster, you do more, but there in 2014, when I was in Bahrain, living what should have been a dream job, there was this quiet voice that said, go home. And that was it. It was like, go home. And I heard that voice and I was like, it's time for me to go home.
Yeah.
And I didn't even really have a home. I'd been on the move for over a decade. Friends barely saw me, family barely saw me. I hadn't been in a relationship, And so I went back to DC and I sort of set goals for myself. I'm sort of a goal-oriented person. I set goals for myself. I said, number one, you're never going back to the Middle East. It's enough of that bullshit, right? I'm sure eventually I will go back to the Middle East, but at that point I was like, I'm never going back, and I just tried to create some goals for me. Like, so not going back to the Middle East, finish your PhD. I'd been sort of putting it off and traveling a lot. It's just like a tangible goal, something for me to hold on to and push for. Yeah. And the third thing I said, and I had no idea what it meant, was settle down. Was like, settle down, whatever that means. It was like, they were just ideas that popped into my head. It was like my subconscious knew what I needed to be healthy, and really pushed me to do those things.
Well, it sounds like for so long you were having that constant inner struggle too, because you were trying to learn and understand the fundamentalist Muslim, and that completely contradicts who we are as Americans.
Yeah,
and I mean, a lot of people want to do the whole like, oh, it's melting pot. We all need to just live together. It's really fucking hard to live together when you have one side who truly hates the idea of who America is, the United States of America is. I'm not saying they're all bad. I've met a lot of really good Muslims over
Yeah.
Most of our interpreters, I would consider friends. I love those guys, but
yeah. I mean, I think that was the thing for me, was to get that. I mean, I think one of the things that we miss, and you're saying this, is that nuance. We can't talk about all of any group of people, right? Sure. And for me, for that long period of time, I was resisting. We all want to be comfortable and sort of live lives where we are with our friends and family and doing the things that we love. And I was resisting that for over a decade, right? I was chasing down the most uncomfortable places and jobs for over a decade. And like I said, I see others who don't hear that voice, or who don't listen to that voice. And I hope that my story is two things. One, it's for people who are sort of really grinding after something, to allow themselves a moment to reassess and to say, so like for me, like I had to stop and say, okay, look, like I'm this obsessive, passionate person, but I've got to do something else for a while, or I'm going to die. Like I'm going to lose it.
Yeah.
And it doesn't mean that I'm not passionate. It doesn't mean that I'm not committed. It doesn't mean that I'm, going to go do anything I can. But at this moment in my life, I need to stop and reassess. And that's what I've been doing for 6 years. It's hard to believe.
Yeah.
But, I met my partner, and he's from a small town in Missouri, right? He graduated high school with 11 people.
Holy shit.
I know. And I moved to Kansas City, like I said, in 2015 to be with him. He has 2 kids from previous marriage.
Okay.
And so his ex-wife lives just up the road. Well, not just up the road, far enough up the road from us, but not too far.
You guys don't have Sunday dinner together?
It's not like that. And it's it sucks to say this, but I have struggled to live a normal life. You know, and Alex from 2010 or 2012 would have said normal is bad.
Yeah.
But I've really struggled to learn how to live like a normal life where you're not running after the next thing and moving every 6 or 12 months or hopping on a plane to go somewhere or living somewhere you really don't even like. You know, we
Yeah.
have great next door neighbors who we spend a lot of time with, hanging out with,
Yeah.
volleyball games with the kids, you know, like going to the movies and watching kids shows that I don't necessarily want to watch, right?
No more bus rides in the middle of the desert.
Yeah, but it's been a new kind of adventure that has been necessary for me to remain like a sane, healthy person.
Yeah.
You know,
Is it? Do you feel any kind of longing for the lifestyle that you used to have?
I don't. You know, what I would say, like I said a few minutes ago, is there's still like this like passion. I'm still like this passionate person. Everything I'm doing is like, no, we got to do it 100%. You know, we got to do the right thing. You always, you know, and so that is always there. But I see how if I had stayed on that path of deploying every year, essentially, if I had stayed on that path, it would have destroyed me. And so
Yeah.
I don't want that. There is that part of me, obviously, that's like, oh, I used to be a badass. I used to do cool shit and live an awesome life.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
But
man, I used to be like a cage fighter and fucking traveled all overseas and did all this shit. I
yeah,
don't do that stuff anymore. I mean, I still with the nonprofit, I get to recreate a lot of that stuff, and
yeah,
and that's where I get my adventures. So I kind of still I don't know if I will ever lose the need and the urge and the longing for something else.
yeah.
And I had a conversation with my girlfriend once, and I realized she's super analytical. She's really fucking smart. She's way smarter than me. So we were sitting here talking one day, and I said something along those lines. I'm just like, I need an adventure. I was like, I'm bored,
Yeah.
and I literally just got back from fucking climbing the highest mountain peak in the Rockies, and like, I just got back from canoeing the entire St. Croix River,
Yeah.
and we got to the end, like the second me and my buddy Will, who canoed it with me, the St. Croix River meets up with the Mississippi River in Prescott, Wisconsin.
Okay.
So we get there, and the water is very different colors, so you could see exactly where they meet. So we canoed out to the point where they meet, and we literally just sat there right where they met and didn't say a word for probably like 2 or 3 minutes. And we were just sitting here, and I'm just like, I look back, want to keep going? I was just like, I'm just not satisfied. The hard
Yeah.
thing is like I'm extremely grateful for the experiences I get to have right now. Like I always say, my second chance is it revolves around at least helping other people see that there's a lot of beauty in this world. And depression, a lot of people hate when I say this, but depression is a choice. You don't have to be. You have to make those steps. And now when I say that is you can't just be like, oh, I'm not depressed anymore. That's not what I'm talking about.
Yeah. Yeah.
What I'm saying is you need to build, the steps. And like we had talked about on the phone the other day, in 2015 when I was, suicidal and tried to take my own life, I decided my goal in my life, this is for me. I wanted to be that person who could have pulled that gun out of my hand back in 2015.
Yeah.
And I
Right.
said, 5 years from now, this is who I'm going to be. That was 5 years ago. And so now I'm just like, fuck, who do I want to be 5 years from now? Like, what do I want?
Exactly.
What are my
That's
accomplishments going to
absolutely
be?
right. Yeah.
I want to be a good dad, and, I'd like to hope I'm still with my girlfriend in 5 years because she's awesome.
Yeah.
I'd like to be, good in a relationship, but I also want to be, somebody that people can look up to. I want to be somebody who inspires others.
Yeah.
I
Absolutely.
think that's the goal of my life, is to inspire others to be great. I want to
Yeah.
inspire others to find something more,
Yeah.
because I feel like, like you were saying when you were in Bahrain, it seemed like you had a very safe environment, right?
Yep.
And it's like, it doesn't have to only be that, and then you realize that your calling, your next step was to go and, settle down here in the US, but I feel like a lot of people live the way society tells them to rather
Yeah.
than what their mind is telling them to.
Yeah. And mental health is like really important, and I think it's important that we talk about it in a way that pushes people to get the help they need.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
there are people who require medication. They have hormone or chemical issues that can only be addressed with medication. And if that is the case, then that person needs to pursue that, right?
Exactly.
Solve mental health first, right? And that can be one part of it. I think sometimes people are overprescribed, but that's not for me to say. I'm not a
Right.
doctor, and people need to get the help they need, right? To me, that is really important, because sometimes there's a stigma associated with, oh, if I go see a psychiatrist, or I go see a therapist, or I talk about it, then I'm weak, I'm not a man or something. And we have to really push people to get whatever help they need.
Yeah.
That's one part of it. And I agree 100% with what you're saying, is that we also have to create the hero that we want to be, and do whatever the fuck it takes to realize that.
Yep.
There's a part of it where, like I said, you get the help you need, and there's a part of it where you grab your balls and you move forward. And that
Yeah.
to me is really important.
I think the key to somebody pulling themselves out of a depression is to actually sit down, and you need to unpack everything, right?
That's
But what
absolutely right.
the problem is, a lot of people get to that point where they're like, okay, I'm going to unpack everything. Well, now we need to choose what we're going to throw away and what we're going to repack up and put aside, because you can't just fucking, say you're coming home from a trip. You can't just unpack your truck and throw everything in the fucking street.
Right.
That's
Right.
not going to fix anything. You have to
Yeah.
figure out where you're going to store it, how you're going
Yep.
to store it,
Yep.
just to use that as
And
an example.
yeah, and you can't unpack and repack based on the life you have lived. If you
Mhm.
are trying to live a new life, you can't use the rules and principles and habits that you've learned to
Yeah,
plan for that new life.
exactly.
And so it takes, we'll have to do another podcast, but
Oh, for sure. I
this
want to
is
hear
one
more
of the
stories about your crazy ass running around the fucking desert.
yeah. But one of the things that I was watching one of your podcasts where you talked with someone who's building, um, I don't know if he calls it a retreat, but I just remember Fort Hope as one of the places that they
Yeah,
were building.
Project Die Hard.
Project Die Hard, right? And so one of the passions that I have, and I haven't done anything to build this, is like I lived in a Catholic silent monastery for a long time,
Mhm.
and I would love to be able to help veterans who are at that point. And I don't know that it's a lot of people, probably not, but to have like a silent retreat, right? Where
Dude,
you,
I would totally come.
yeah, I mean, I think there's a part of it where people need to fucking wrestle wolves and go, Project Die Hard and things like that. But there's a point
Mhm.
where it's like, okay, now I'm ready to spend a weekend. Obviously, not 100% silent, but a silent retreat where you get to really unpack. Because the first step, and we talked about this on the phone the other day, the first step to me, and I talk about this all the time, is to conceptualize our future self. And I use that word intentionally. I don't say imagine or think about, because conceptualize is a little bit odd of a word, right? We don't use it very much. And that's the point. It's like, wait, conceptualize, what the fuck does that mean? Like, what are you thinking? What does that mean? It's like to stop and to conceptualize that hero self. And don't even think about doing anything. We're not going to go do anything. Like I said, there's all sorts of opportunities to do stuff, and I think
Mhm.
that is an integral side of it. But I think there comes a point where, for those of us who are moving into a new life, where we just stop. And I play around with this idea, and it's called ready, set, stop. You know, just
I like that.
it's going to take you time to get ready, right?
Mhm.
Get yourself ready. Like I said, grab your balls and get ready to stop, because it's not easy. But I think
Yeah.
it's integral to us. Like too often when we come back from combat, and I was a fireman, and an EMT. So um, even in those environments, you're dealing with accumulative stress. It's so easy to say, okay, well, this is how I deal with, cars overturned or houses on fire or dead bodies, how I've dealt with it. So this is how I'm going to deal with the next phase of my life.
Yeah.
And it doesn't work that way. We have to
No.
come up with new skills and new techniques to live that new life. And like I
Exactly.
said, not that I've it mastered, I'm still struggling to sort of live that new life, but
Yeah.
thank God I've, come up with some techniques that have worked for me.
I think that retreat idea is a great idea. And as you know, I'm trying to start one as well for like activities and adventures. But I
Yeah,
think
right.
the basis of my retreat is, let's figure out what's the fucking issue, right? But on top of that, we're going to be learning a skill. So what you're going to be doing is you're going to be tying that trauma to a new hobby. So anytime you start to think about that trauma, you're going to think about that hobby. You're going to choose to go do that hobby rather than go through that fucking bullshit roller coaster of your past.
Yep.
So it's all about remapping your brain to actually tie a bad memory to a good memory.
And I think it's all components of the healing process, right? And like I said, I mean, I think I'm not blowing smoke here, but I think that those types of engagements have a broader appeal and probably more impact. There's just so many people where it's like the tactile, like experiential side of it where they need to feel that. It just so happens that my history and the things that I've really been drawn to, I think, is in that phase or in that small group of people who are like, yeah, I want to take some time and not do shit. Yeah, I probably have a couple beers, have a conversation here or there, but just stop. And I think it all fits together, like Project Die Hard, what you're doing. And I've been learning more and more about other veteran first responder organizations and how it fits in. I think it all works together because there's no one solution for everyone, and we just have to provide resources so that, that number 22 comes down.
And
all the time.
That's why somebody's like, oh, you got to keep your ideas quiet. What if somebody steals it? Fucking great. You want to know why? Because if we get 1,000 fucking retreats for veterans, that's 1,000 fucking options. Because what if I create something that somebody doesn't want, but you create something like the silent retreat? That's what they need, right?
Yeah.
And then you get somebody who needs some adventure. You need somebody who needs, a place to live, like Project Die Hard. If you actually need somewhere to stay for a year, or you need something, there has to be hundreds, thousands of retreats for veterans so they can choose, because I'm not going to be able to provide everything. You're going to be able to provide some things that I can't, vice versa. So
and the only reason that you and I are in Project Die Hard, I saw him, he was very open to other people as well. The only reason we are able to say that is because we're not trying to get rich. It's because it's really about the veteran. What matters here is the lives of veterans, and like I said, first responders, people who are on the front lines. And for those of us who have suffered, it's really about helping people.
Yeah, when you hit that lowest point in your life, like, there, ever since I started telling my story, about putting a gun to my head, I have had so many veterans reach out to me and tell me about a time that they tried to kill themselves. You guys would be fucking mind blown if you knew the types and the individual people who have tried. I would never sit and tell anybody else's story.
Absolutely.
However, some of the most badass people I know have tried to kill themselves. They don't talk about it because they don't feel comfortable, and that's fine. But
it's
don't. Go ahead.
It's such a privilege to be able to, for someone to feel comfortable to share their story with you. And like you said, I've also had a number of people reach out to me and talk about where they are in their lives, and it's overwhelming. You know what I mean? Like sometimes I just sit out on my back patio and I'm just like, we gotta do more, right? We gotta do more. And that is the reason that I reached out to you, because I was like, I mean, the email I sent you was like, can I help you? Can I collaborate with you? Can I partner with you on something? Like, how can I, because as much, like I said, I haven't started a retreat or anything like that, but what I hope is that I'm able to share your story, right? And I know that you want to share my story, and I'll start talking about Project Die Hard, because, there's not enough out there for veterans and first. There's not enough out there. And if we can all support each other, then maybe we can start to make a dent and really bring, I just spoke to my alumni, the University of Chicago, there's not a lot of veterans there, right? And I talked about veterans' mental health, and I talked about, the veteran suicide rate. That's a group of people who probably wouldn't hear that very often. And so I have my network that I'm able to share that with, and you have yours, and we're able to just broadcast the message as much as possible.
For sure, man. And I, again, probably have said this on every freaking podcast, but TJ from We Defy, he's the vice president. We did a podcast, I think it was like my 4th podcast, and it was about We Defy training jiu-jitsu and how it helps vets. But we were talking about our partnership, because Warriors Next Adventure teams up with We Defy. We do a lot of jiu-jitsu stuff. And so I'm an ambassador for We Defy. That's a completely different organization. Actually, November 13th, we're actually doing a hiking ruck march for We Defy. I'm sharing everything through Warriors Next Adventure because I have a pretty big following, but all of the money that day is raised for We Defy because I don't give a shit where the money's going to, as long as it's going to help veterans. I'm okay with it.
Yep.
So TJ said something that just it stuck with me, and I always make sure I know I got it from him. But in the veteran to veteran world, when we're trying to help each other, 1 + 1 = 3 every single time. Because if we help each other, I think there's a mutual gain for both of us on this podcast, because people get to see your book and hear your story, which is fuck, dude, we got to talk more.
Yeah.
But I also get more content, and people get to see the nonprofit and how I talk to people, because anytime I have like a veteran one-on-one or something like that, this is what we do. We sit and we bullshit, we talk about stuff, but at the end we always talk about how can we somehow improve, or why do we feel the way that we feel? Because I'm not a licensed counselor or anything like that, but
right.
It's all just theories and understandings that I've come across, in my years of trying to heal myself,
Yeah.
So hey,
all
we
right, brother.
just hit 11 o'clock.
Yeah.
Where can people get your book? What's it called? And
you can go to Amazon, type my name, Alexs Thompson, or the book's called I'll Go.
Awesome.
So thanks a lot, Nick. This has been great.
For sure. Can you send me can we do like a PayPal thing? Can you send me your PayPal? Can you sign a book for me and send it to me?
Yeah. I'll do all that stuff.
Cool. Send me your PayPal, man, and I'll throw you some change for it.
I'm not going to send you my PayPal, but I'll send you a buck.
Oh, no, I'll pay for it, man. I want to support you.
All right, brother. Thanks so much.
Man. Yeah, we'll talk soon. Hey, don't go anywhere just for a second, okay?
Okay.
All right. Hey, guys, thanks for tuning in to Warriors Next Adventure. Good God, I cannot wait to talk to this guy more. Go to his page. It's thisherolife.com and check out his book, I'll Go. The best way to support veterans is to buy their stuff, support their businesses and help us get along. We don't just want money, but we want to provide value. So I'm excited. I'm going to buy his book. Hopefully I'll get a copy sent out today. Again, as usual, our Warriors Next Adventure podcast is brought to you by TKL Knives. Tim is a Marine Corps veteran. He makes some amazing hunting and kitchen knives. And if you use promo code WARRIOR, you'll get 10% off, and Tim donates 10% to the nonprofit. So go check it out. I appreciate all you guys, and we will talk to you soon.